The story is about a sweet and kind-hearted girl named Ashoka who always dreamed of becoming a school teacher. Right after her graduation, when a senior teacher went on leave, she finally got the chance to fulfill her dream. She went to teach a specific class where there was a boy named Saga. He was extremely handsome and good-looking, but most of his attention was focused on singing rather than studies because he was obsessed with music. On her first day, Ashoka introduced herself and explained that her name meant to bloom. This name, its meaning, and the new teacher herself left quite an impression on Saga. One day, while Ashoka was checking classrooms after school, she saw Saga secretly practicing music alone in the music room late at night. She was stunned to see him there at that hour. Before she could ask him anything, Saga saw her, panicked like a squirrel in a supermarket, jumped off a tire swing, and ran away. Ashoka thought he was such a crazy boy and worried that he might get injured. She had no intention of punishing him, but he had forgotten his recorder there. When she played it, what she heard wasn't just a voice, it was music that touched her soul. The lyrics and the emotion in his singing moved her deeply. Meanwhile, halfway home, Saga remembered he had left his recorder behind. That recorder was more precious to him than life itself, so he immediately ran back to the school, thinking the teacher would scold him badly. Instead, Ashoka didn't scold him at all. She encouraged him and told him that his singing sounded professional and that she was surprised by his talent. She was genuinely happy that he had a dream, and she even requested him to perform the song live for her. Saga was overjoyed because it was the first time someone had encouraged him so sincerely. Ashoka told him that she was truly happy about his dream and wanted him to work hard and pursue it with full dedication. The story then jumped forward 4 years. Ashoka was no longer a teacher. She now runs a small restaurant with her sister. The reason why she left teaching wasn't clear, but it was revealed that her sister's boyfriend had proposed to her, and that changed everything. After the wedding, her sister was going to live with her husband, and Ashoka didn't want to be a third wheel in their life. So, she decided not to live with them anymore. Around the same time, she saw an advertisement for a live-in maid position. The job included free accommodation, meals, and a good salary. Seeing this, she happily applied. A few days later, she stood in front of the house where she was about to start her new job. There, she met a manager from an entertainment company named Kdrama. He explained everything to her in detail. The house was shared by 7 boys who were part of an emerging boy band. The company had rented the house for them under a contract. Of course, when 7 boys lived together, chaos was a guarantee. Kdrama explained that she had to take care of everything, watering the plants, looking after the boys' stuff, cleaning, doing their laundry, and making sure to prepare breakfast and dinner on time. The worst part was the condition of their bedrooms, which left Ashoka completely horrified. After explaining everything, Kdrama also warned her that she wasn't allowed to fall in love with any of the boys. That was a strict rule. If anything like that happened, she would be fired on the spot. Ashoka didn't respond and just stood there, surprised. The leader of the boy band turned out to be Saga. But things weren't going well for him or the band. They were lacking motivation, inspiration, and most of the time, they were just lazy. Meanwhile, another boy band named Janine had also signed with the same company and had become incredibly popular. They were seen everywhere, concerts, events, fan meets, while Saga's band, Bloom, was falling behind. All of this made Saga constantly stressed. Being the leader, Saga carried a lot of responsibility and was always serious and strict, unlike the others who enjoyed their lives carefreely. On their way back home one day, the other boys returned together chatting, but Saga, who seemed distant, went home alone. When he entered the house, he noticed something surprising. Everything was neat and tidy, and there was a girl cooking in the kitchen. When Saga and Ashoka saw each other, they recognized one another. In the chaos of the moment, something slipped and spilled all over Saga. Both of them were stunned. But then, the rest of the boys entered and completely misunderstood the situation. They thought Saga had brought a girl home. Both he and Ashoka were utterly embarrassed. To clear the confusion, Ashoka explained that the manager must have forgotten to tell them she was their new maid. Then, she introduced herself properly to everyone. She explained all the rules and routines she'd be following. However, she felt awkward when the boys tried flirting with her openly. Most of the boys were nice to her, except for Saga, who stayed quiet and cold. When she went near him to congratulate him, She told him she still remembered his first song and that she had loved it. Hearing this, Saga felt like his entire career was collapsing. His mood worsened, and he skipped breakfast. Meanwhile, Ashoka was also battling her own emotional struggle. Teaching had been her dream, yet she had left it behind. The reason wasn't clear yet, but she often got haunted by bad memories. Whenever she saw someone in a school uniform, it brought her mood down. After sending the boys off, a man named Trinity arrived. He was part of the management team. He checked everything, gave her a short evaluation, and then took her to the company's office. That day, she had prepared a special lunch for the boys, hoping to befriend them. While they were practicing, she secretly watched from the side and felt extremely happy. They had put in so much effort, and their dancing was full of energy. She even started clapping for them, but Saga scolded her, telling her not to behave like a child because it felt too immature. He believed they hadn't achieved anything worth celebrating yet. Despite being younger, Saga seemed far more mature and serious than Ashoka. At that point, Ashoka returned his recorder, which he had left at home. Just then, the company president arrived. All the boys immediately froze like students who forgot there was a surprise test. She brought bad news that their performance wasn't improving, and as a result, their contracts wouldn't be renewed after 6 months. This was their final stretch. Though most of them had sort of expected it, the news still hit like a brick, especially Ashoka, who was visibly shocked. Ashoka turned to the boys from abroad and urged them to say something, to explain, to react at least. But Saga promptly told her to shut up and stop speaking like an outsider who had bought a backstage pass to their inner drama. After the president left, they discovered the real issue, that there was internal friction within the band. They were upset with Saga because one of their members, the 8th one, had quit, and they blamed Saga's strictness for it. Since that guy left, the band had felt lifeless and uninspired. Ashoka followed Saga outside and told him that 6 months was no reason to give up. She encouraged him to work hard, hoping things might turn around. But Saga found all this talk pointless. He asked her who she was to motivate him, a teacher who abandoned her own dreams and ended up becoming a maid. That one really stung Ashoka, but she stayed quiet. A flashback revealed that Saga used to be deeply attached to his teacher. When he got his first contract, he went straight to her to share the news, only to find that she had left the school suddenly, without any explanation, to take on family responsibilities. Saga was deeply hurt by her sudden engagement, and seeing her again now only reopened those old wounds. Ashoka didn't defend her choices. Instead, she told him to forget her and focus on himself. She was being honest, and she believed he had real talent. When she first heard him sing, she instantly realized he had something special that others didn't. She warned him that if he gave up now, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Her words actually reached Saga's heart. A faint smile appeared on his face, along with a spark of new courage. The boys gathered themselves and approached the president to ask for one last chance. They requested her to evaluate their next performance and only then make a final decision about renewing their contracts. Ashoka joined them in making the request. The president, perhaps moved by their spirit or just bored of paperwork, granted them one last shot. They would get 5 minutes on stage at a live concert in Tokyo 2 weeks later. With very little time, the boys panicked, but also buckled down. They began practicing everything they had. It was their final hope to prove themselves. They worked tirelessly, both at home and in the company. Ashoka supported them consistently, handling all the housework and even fetching the groceries. Saga, though grumpy by default, couldn't resist helping when he saw her carrying heavy bags. He might have looked like a cactus on the outside, but inside he was pure marshmallow. Finally, the day of the concert arrived. They reached the venue, and Ashoka was amazed by how huge it was. She had become emotionally attached to the boys, especially to Saga. Whenever the office staff mistreated the boys, she couldn't stay quiet. She always stood up for them, reminding everyone how hard these boys had worked and how good their performance was going to be. The other band was very popular, and the boys were incredibly cool and also incredibly kind-hearted. Before their performance, they came to wish Bloom good luck, and then their 5-minute stage time began. Bloom performed confidently and impressively, singing so well that they completely won over the audience. Ashoka even had tears of joy seeing them perform so well. The audience response was so overwhelming that even management was left shocked. They had never expected such an outstanding performance. The president, watching secretly, was also surprised. Ashoka was thrilled for Saga and told him she was sure good things were coming their way after such a great performance. But Saga teased her, saying she talked like a child. After all, change didn't happen that fast. Still, something about Ashoka had begun to touch Saga's heart. For once, his mood was decent. He joined the rest of the band in the green room, where Ashoka was again showering them with praise. Charged up, Saga blurted out that everyone was worried, but he, as the leader, would write songs so amazing that within 6 months, they would be among the top bands in Japan. It might have been a big claim, or just his adrenaline talking, but the funny thing was, the president was quietly sitting right there. Seeing her, everyone was startled. She acknowledged that their performance today was truly outstanding, but not yet enough to warrant a contract renewal. She said she was sorry and couldn't do it, at least not yet, but she would consider it. She asked Saga if he really meant what he said. If they managed to reach #1 in streaming within the next 6 months, their contract would be renewed. With that, the president left, but Ashoka was beaming with joy, even though the rest were nervous. It was a huge milestone to aim for, but Ashoka cheered them up again, saying there was always a way. A little while ago, she had told Saga that she now had a new dream, and it was seeing them rise again as Bloom. If they succeeded, she would feel successful too, and that sweet, sincere confession stayed with Saga more than he cared to admit. When Ashoka went to him, he casually threw a towel on her face, leaned close to her ear, and whispered a promise to do everything he could to help her achieve her dream. After saying that, he walked away without even looking back, and somehow that one act brought tears to Ashoka's eyes and filled her heart with excitement. She stood there smiling like a rom-com heroine whose brain had just melted. Outside, even Saga wore a soft smile on his face. The entire place echoed with the voices of the band and posters plastered on the walls, and the wallpaper was also themed around Bloom. Being associated with Bloom made Ashoka feel motivated, especially because Saga gave off such positive energy and he was extremely attractive. The next day, when she was heading toward the trash bin, she kept thinking about that moment when he threw the towel on her face and delivered that dramatic line. Lost in that thought, she smiled to herself, and just then, Saga saw her and wondered why she looked so thrilled while handling garbage. Ashoka reached him and repeated the same memory out loud again, which made Saga blush and nervously mutter that she was crazy. In truth, as much as Ashoka enjoyed living at Saga's place, he too felt happy having her around. Later, when Saga was making breakfast, Ashoka learned that he preferred Western meals over Japanese ones and didn't enjoy food cooked by others. He was actually good at cooking. Ashoka quickly observed his likes and dislikes and noted them all in her meal planning book. Meanwhile, the boys remembered the challenge the president gave them. As they lay down to sleep, they started to worry because in a rush of overconfidence, they had accepted the task, but becoming the #1 streamer was no small feat. They weren't even sure if they could pull it off. The next day, Ashoka went to the office to sign her contract. The president spoke sternly to the band, but stayed gentle with Ashoka. They sat down for a conversation, and it came up that Bloom's fans, nicknamed the Bloomings, were gradually dwindling. Ashoka boldly claimed that she would bring people in within 2 days, as she didn't want anyone to underestimate Bloom. The president appreciated the challenge, but as soon as Ashoka stepped out, she panicked, wondering what madness had led her to make that promise. Getting a crowd of 1,000 people wouldn't be easy. Meanwhile, she checked on the boys and found them doing a photo shoot in strange costumes. Saga honestly looked quite handsome, but the sight made her feel shy and awkward, so she avoided looking at him directly. The boys rejected the first costume idea. Then they were given a bad boy makeover, but that didn't work either. Ashoka suggested that they stop forcing weird concepts and just be themselves, which turned out to be a winning idea. She dressed them all in simple white outfits, gave each of them a flower, and told them to pose naturally. The shoot turned out to be a success. Although all these formalities were happening, Saga remained under pressure. It was going to be extremely tough to prove themselves in 6 months. He announced that things would become stricter from then on. He distributed workout plans and exercise routines to each member. He also gave Ashoka his number so she could coordinate the meals. He didn't want any mistakes when it came to the boys' diets. Ashoka now took full responsibility for their meals and kept a close watch on them. They practiced constantly, had to run a lot, and their lives became difficult under her supervision. But in truth, her own life became even more challenging. By the end of the day, Saga would be so exhausted that when he sat down to write lyrics, no words would come. The other boys grew frustrated too. They were tired, and all they were allowed to eat were chicken and vegetables. One day, Ashoka secretly gave them small brownies as a treat, but their timing was so bad that Saga caught them red-handed. He got angry, but another band member was even angrier and lashed out at Saga for being overly strict. A fight broke out between them again, and Saga, frustrated, walked away. Ashoka followed him to try and calm him down. She knew the boys were fighting more often now due to the pressure, but Saga told her to stay out of it and mind her own business. Ashoka refused to back off and declared that this was her business. Her duty was to make all of their lives better, and that's exactly what she was doing. Saga then opened up and said the boys weren't just teammates, they were friends. They used to be genuinely happy. But after the 8th member left without a word because of Saga's strictness, everything fell apart. Some of them even blamed Saga for being too hard on them. Finally, they got some good news. Ashoka arranged something special for them. A festival was happening nearby, and thanks to her personal contacts, she managed to get them a 10-minute slot for a performance. The boys, desperate for exposure, saw this small window as something huge. Saga hesitated a bit, but agreed. He joked that if Ashoka kept bribing him with brownies, he might just tolerate a few more rule breaks. The boys began preparing more seriously for the festival. On the other side, Ashoka worked hard to promote them. She cared a lot about Saga, and he knew it well. But a problem remained that they still didn't have lyrics for a new song. The night before the festival, Ashoka went out to meet some club and society organizers for promotion. It got very late, and she still hadn't returned. Saga grew worried, though he didn't call her because it felt awkward. As time passed, he couldn't hold back and went to look for her. He found her drunk, talking to club members and promoting Bloom in her own quirky way, asking questions, playing games, and trying to convince them to promote Bloom online. But she had clearly drunk too much. She was completely out of it when Saga found her. He told her to come with him, but she wasn't in a state to walk, so he carried her home on his back. Along the way, Ashoka kept giving him inspirational speeches until she eventually rested her head on his shoulder and fell asleep. On the day of the grand festival, a big issue came up. The posters printed for the event didn't mention Bloom's name, and even worse, their slot was labeled as an escort show. The boys were humiliated. Their egos were crushed. Ashoka explained it was a misunderstanding and apologized sincerely. Still, she couldn't back down now, so she dressed up as an escort and helped out at the venue, knowing how much she had done for the band, never asking anything for herself. And that day, when the boys went out into the crowd and saw the huge audience waiting, everyone was recognizing them. Posters with their names were everywhere, and even the locals wore Bloom-themed accessories. They were receiving a lot of affection from the shopkeepers. Something special was already planned for them. Now, dressed in mascot costumes, they noticed Ashoka standing nearby. They went up to her and told her that they finally realized something, that they were actually thinking of skipping the mascot show altogether, but the only thing stopping them was their fear of Saga. Just then, they noticed Ashoka arriving from behind and were left completely stunned, wondering who on earth was inside the mascot costume. Turns out, it was Saga himself, who had come all the way there just to help Ashoka. To fulfill her commitment, the boys, still dressed in those ridiculous animal costumes, began performing their pop number right in the middle of the mascot show. Since she had done so much for them, Saga now wanted to do something in return. Earlier, Saga used to be the grumpy root vegetable of the group, but now he had started opening up to Ashoka and even began sharing his thoughts. He confessed that he was extremely stressed and felt like he was dragging the whole band down. According to him, he wasn't able to write any good songs lately, and because of that, even the others were suffering. He really didn't like that feeling. This was the first time Saga had ever shared his inner worries with someone. Ashoka, trying to understand him, came closer and asked why he insisted on carrying all the burden alone. She reminded him that just like others depended on him, He too should learn to depend on others. If a person starts thinking they have to do everything by themselves, that's simply not possible. She encouraged him to share his burdens with others. At that moment, the rest of the band boys arrived and, having overheard everything, jumped in with their own thoughts. They asked him who he thought he was to hog all the stress. After all, they were a brand. If they rise together, and if they fall, they'll make sure to fall in the most dramatic, synchronized boy band fashion possible. Each member then came forward and took a share of Saga's burden. One said he would handle choreography, another took charge of management issues, and yet another guy joked that if anyone in the band slacked off, it would be his sacred duty to make sure they regretted it thoroughly. Ashoka would be responsible for planning the diet and meals. They were now distributing the responsibilities one by one so that Saga could focus on writing lyrics without stress. Saga was actually feeling good now. For the first time, he found relief in sharing his problems. In return, even those two boys who always fought with each other managed to patch up. It was clear now that they were truly becoming a team, and for Ashoka, her happiness was deeply connected to the happiness of all 7 boys. Later, Saga came to Ashoka in private. It was really difficult for him, but he still managed to thank her. He wasn't someone who knew how to say sorry or thank you, but clearly he was changing. Just then, they found out that their mascot performance had gone viral on social media. Someone had uploaded a video, and most of the comments were about how the boy in the costume, Saga, was definitely the lead, super handsome, and probably the first person in history to look that cool in a giant fuzzy suit. Seeing the rise in their publicity, the boys decided that this was the perfect time to start sharing their daily life regularly. But just then, 2 tensions arrived hand in hand. First, Ashoka's sister showed up. Her husband had cheated on her and she was in tears. Second, a new manager entered the scene. Their previous manager, Ken, had been replaced, and now the company had hired its strictest manager for them. This new lady, Rosie, used to manage Chenny earlier. Her sudden arrival shocked everyone. At the same time, Ashoka's sister continued crying in the background. Her situation had created quite an awkward scene. The boys were left sitting there, unsure whether to be happy or sad. Just then, their old manager, Ken, returned and announced that he had been promoted and assigned a special certification task, managing another band. This, of course, felt like an open insult. Rosie praised herself loudly, saying she was the one who turned these boys from zeros to heroes and would now make them the next Chenny. She even taunted them, wondering what on earth gave them the idea to ask the president to make them #1 streamers. It sounded impossible to her. After roasting them thoroughly, she stormed off. With the situation now clear, Ashoka started tending to her sister's injuries. She worried that Saga might be uncomfortable with her sister's sudden arrival, as he often appeared cold and distant. First, she listened to her sister's tragic story, and then informed her that she would need to get the boys' permission for her to stay. While going to talk to the boys, she discovered that Saga was absolutely terrified of dogs. Apparently, the dog once barked the soul right out of him. To help him get over it, she asked him to come along for a walk with the dog. Ashoka was thrilled and expressed her happiness, since lately she had been managing all the Bloomlocks as well. First, the mascot video went viral, then their live streaming started going well, and now they even had the best manager. Everything was looking up. So, Ashoka made a request to Saga, asking if her sister could stay for a few days. Saga said yes. The next day, her sister was shocked when she saw Ashoka's room. It was a complete mess. The boys were like little kids, totally dependent on Ashoka for everything. From asking where the toothpaste was to requesting towels, they relied on her for everything. Rosie also noticed all this when she arrived early that morning. She then told the boys that she had arranged an interview for Bloom, where they had to perform a mascot dance. But Saga had a problem with this. He said that they couldn't always be mascots. It wasn't their identity. Rosie firmly responded that their publicity was currently zero, so they should quietly accept whatever work came their way. When the boys left, Rosie gave Ashoka a stern lecture. She told her that the boys were not kindergarteners going to school and that it was problematic how dependent they had become on her. It wasn't Ashoka's fault, but she was still part of the story. She added that if the boys kept behaving this way, how would they ever become independent? She explained that Cheney members handled all their own tasks without any helpers, and only if these boys became independent at home would they become independent in the real world. Rosie indirectly told Ashoka that if the boys ever started doing their own work, she should consider resigning. Saga had overheard everything. That evening, when the boys returned, Ashoka noticed a big change in them. Rosie had taken them to meet Cheney, where they saw how the group members managed everything themselves, even while shooting. The boys, inspired by the visit, began dividing their work among themselves. Ashoka was initially stunned. She thought they were going to be totally unfair to her, but eventually she admitted this was a good thing. This was the spirit they needed. The next morning, when Ashoka woke up, she saw that the boys had already prepared their own breakfast, and the entire place was spotless. After sending the boys out, her sister told her that if the boys were managing things on their own, she wouldn't be needed much longer. A little later, Naru invited Ashoka to meet him somewhere and asked her about where to buy certain decorative grasses for an exclusive shopping shoot. He also shared all the details about how they were dividing up responsibilities, who would do the laundry, the cleaning, the cooking. Along with that, she also discovered that the owner of a nearby cafe, a girl named Naho, actually had a crush on Saga. The boys' interview was over, and they learned that their viewership had increased by 50%. Rosie told them they had 5 days to make and upload 5 videos. She gave them details about the songs and choreography, but Saga once again had an issue. He refused to sing songs written by someone else. However, Rosie knew how to get her way. She insisted and said that for now, they had to focus on quantity. In this way, a few more days passed, and Ashoka observed that the boys had become independent. Their house and everything in it was spotless, and she barely had any work left. Rosie informed them that the next day, a major channel's morning show would be featuring them as guests, and the shoot would take place in their home. Some of the boys were thrilled, they were excited, but at the same time, completely stressed. Someone remarked that they might have to showcase the whole house, to which Rosie responded firmly that of course they would. Was there a problem? Then they were briefed that they needed to create their signature moves and mention a special, unique quality each of them possessed. That news finally brought smiles to everyone's faces, including Ashoka's. Just then, her sister said she was packing up because it seemed like her time to leave had come. She commented that she had stayed here long enough and told Ashoka that if she ever needed her, she could come along and they would restart the restaurant together, especially since her fight with her husband was now official. She also remarked that she didn't think things were going to work out here either. Ashoka wanted to take the dog for one last walk, and Saga joined her. Saga asked whether she was about to give up on her dreams again. This bothered him. When Ashoka simply smiled, Saga got more annoyed and told her not to hide behind idiotic smiles. He asked what would happen when she was gone and what about their dream to see Bloom rise. He asked about the promise to support them. Before she could answer, there was an emergency call. When they entered the house, the condition of the living area shocked them. Everything was a mess. Apparently, the boys hadn't really cleaned in days. They only cleaned the visible parts and stuffed all the dirt into the bedroom corners. As a result, their washing machine, dishwasher, and practically every appliance had decided to go on strike. When they were clearing the bedroom for the next day's interview, they accidentally wandered into the living room and a total mess erupted, so much that they couldn't even handle it themselves. Just then, Rosie arrived and saw the disaster. She didn't need any explanations. The sight said it all. While eating, she muttered that these boys were impossible and would never become Cheney. That was when Ashoka got angry. She defended them, saying they were not meant to be Cheney, they were Bloom, and people needed to stop forcing them into that mold. She said they were fine as they were, and should only be encouraged to do their best. Saga found it very special, the way Ashoka always spoke up for them, but never for herself. She stated that everyone was different, and if they needed support, she was ready to give it. What mattered was that they focused on their work and polished their talents. Ashoka then told everyone to start preparing for the interview. Ashoka and her sister were able to deal with the disaster that had unfolded in the house. Still, Ken brought one of his friends to help. Together, they cleaned the house so well that it was unrecognizable. To prepare for the interview, Saga warned all his friends not to mention Cheney. They were Bloom and should remember that. They all did their homework properly, deciding who would speak about what and how to control things during the interview. The next day, a big-time host named Lisa came to their house. Secretly, she was also a fan. The interview was going well until a loud noise came from outside. It was Ashoka's brother-in-law trying to patch things up with his wife. He apologized, but within seconds, returned to his usual behavior. He said there was no one else for either of them, so they should just adjust and accept each other. That angered Ashoka, and she started telling him off, reminding him that she had always stood by him during his tough times. She said mistakes could happen, but forgiveness should follow. To her surprise, the boys also arrived to support her. Saga stepped forward, pulled her brother-in-law aside, and said they were all very busy at the moment, so it was best if he left. While all of this was happening, the Bloom boys were singing beautifully. Ken then suggested that since there was some time left in the interview, they should present a live performance that reflected their true nature. Everyone loved the idea, as the boys began performing live. After the performance, Rosie called everyone together, stood in front of them, and apologized. She admitted she had been wrong, and Ashoka had been right. Sometimes she got too strict, but now she would try to change and figure out how to serve the boys better. Later, Rosie confessed to Ashoka that when she had first joined this job, it was incredibly difficult, but she had learned a lot from her. She realized that always being angry and strict wasn't the only way. Smiling and being lenient mattered too. Now it was time for the sister to leave, and Ashoka didn't need any stories about staying. Saga was also happy seeing this. The next morning during breakfast, the boys announced that while they couldn't do house chores, they would at least help out a little. They promised to put away their dishes, not sell random things. That day, Saga returned home late. Ashoka saw him and, just to startle him, jumped out to scare him. But Sir didn't react at all. Calmly, he picked up a dart, and while throwing it at the board, said that if it hit the bullseye, would she go on a date with him? It didn't look like a perfect hit, but it landed close enough. Saga then said to forget it and started walking away. Little did he know, all the boys had secretly seen and heard everything. They stopped him and insisted his aim was close enough. Then, in true boy band style, they all bombarded him with questions about when he started liking Ashoka, how it happened, and why. He simply denied everything, saying it was a misunderstanding. Then he revealed that he had gone to the president to share a song he had written. The president liked it, but said it lacked something special. She suggested writing a love song instead. That was a problem though. He had never thought about love and didn't know anything about romance. So he planned to do research at a dating place. But how could he go alone? He saw only one girl who made sense, Ashoka. So he wanted to take her on a date for research purposes only. Hearing this, Ashoka was shocked. Who goes on a date for research? Later, Naru asked Saga whether he truly had no feelings for Ashoka. Saga immediately denied it, saying he didn't like or hate her. He was neutral, totally neutral. He insisted he just wanted inspiration for love songs. That night, all the boys gathered in one bedroom to share their own love stories, hoping to inspire Saga to write. But turns out, they were tragically single. One had last dated in elementary school, another was more interested in boys than girls, and the third kept losing his girlfriend to his rival every single time. Honestly, these weren't love stories. They were just painful tales of heartbreak and crushed dreams. Now, Saga was beginning to feel that sitting there was a complete waste of time. He thought it would only make his mood worse on the love front. He wanted to do a recording, but before that, he looked so stressed and disappointed that Ashoka noticed everything quite sharply while passing by. She quietly followed him to the terrace and told him that if her bottle hit the target perfectly, then he would have to go on a date with her. Saga sat there looking utterly stunned, and in the next moment, the bottle landed straight inside the basket, a perfect aim. But Saga neither smiled nor reacted. He just stood up and left, casually stating that he was free on Friday. The next day, when the boys went to their office for practice, Ashoka came there too, bringing lunch for them. Making lunch wasn't really her responsibility, but out of affection, she would often do such things. There, she told Saga that she had asked a few people for suggestions, and everyone unanimously recommended that the zoo would be the best spot for a first date. It was filled with couples and also quite budget-friendly. Saga, on the other hand, was struggling to understand what animals had to do with dating. Clearly, something got lost in translation. At that moment, Ashoka's sister arrived, whom she had actually called, because Rosie had asked her to arrange food from Cheney, and now she had also brought some for the boys. While Rosie was talking to the boys, she smiled several times during her chat with Bloom. It was the first time the boys had ever seen that woman smile, and they were visibly confused, even checking the sky to see if the sun had flipped directions. She then looked at Bloom sweetly and mentioned that since he had joined, he hadn't taken a single day off. His leaves were piling up, so he should take a couple when he felt like resting. Ashoka was pleasantly surprised at how caring Rosie had become. Meanwhile, Saga was secretly browsing for details about the date venue, what things there were, what could count as romantic, and so on. Finally, the day of the date arrived. Saga and Ashoka went to the zoo. Saga looked very handsome, but disaster struck when they saw that all 6 boys had also landed there to celebrate their day off. The boys had assumed that if this was a real date location, then going along purely for research purposes was completely justified, so they tagged along, unintentionally hijacking the entire romantic plan. Seeing them there instantly soured Saga's mood. He didn't feel like roaming, didn't want to eat, and obviously his mood turned sour. After all, this wasn't just a case of being the third wheel. 6 full bones had been tossed into the kebab. Looking at those boys, he felt no trace of romance or love. Ashoka, who was busy clicking pictures of the boys, also noticed that Saga looked really down. So, using an excuse, she made all the boys sit in front and suggested they all split up. Everyone should go wherever they were most interested. She led so well and gave such a clear briefing that she even slipped and said that she was a teacher. Hearing this, everyone was left stunned. She then revealed to Saga that she used to be his school teacher. Saga felt embarrassed and replied that he couldn't even remember whether she was his teacher or not. Well, the boys wandered off to their preferred corners. Naru was still stuck close to Saga. So his mood was completely ruined, and he walked away under the pretext of getting a drink to refresh himself. Left behind, Naru came to Ashoka and asked if she was the same teacher who had met Saga in music class and encouraged him. Ashoka was taken aback. Naru then explained that she had been very special to Saga. The things she had said to him were accidentally recorded on his recorder, and whenever he felt down in life, he would listen to her words again. In short, Ashoka-sensei had a huge influence on Saga's life. He told her that she was very special to him. Just then, Saga showed up and heard all of it. He felt hurt. This was a secret he never wanted Ashoka to know. He told her that she had changed a lot. Back in school, she was a different person, and now, after coming back from the metro, she seemed entirely changed. Hearing this, Ashoka looked shocked and quite disappointed. But actually, there was no need to be. Saga's intentions were good. He meant that she had changed in a positive way. But before he could explain, one of their friends called them, and everyone moved toward that side. Meanwhile, Ashoka's sister had seen that since she delivered food to Cheney, their post on social media had gone viral. Orders were pouring in like monsoon rain, so many that she couldn't handle them alone. She had decided to set up a stall at a festival for a few days and needed help. So Ashoka took 3 or 4 days leave and went to help her. Saga missed her terribly. The house didn't feel like a home without her, but Saga remained completely silent. Whenever he returned from work and saw the empty kitchen, the whole house felt dull. He didn't even feel like going inside. Every corner of the kitchen reminded him of Ashoka. Sometimes he even imagined her sitting there, but Saga wasn't the kind of person who shared his feelings with anyone. He stayed silent, though the other boys spoke openly. They said they missed Ashoka a lot, especially her breakfasts, which always felt special. At the agency, Rosie said that she wanted to take all the boys out for lunch, but Saga didn't feel like going. He made some excuse and slipped away. Outside, he saw Nav, the girl who owns the sauna. He asked her for a favor. There was a cabinet in the kitchen that Ashoka always struggled to open. The door never stayed fixed. He wanted to get it repaired for her. Through Nav, he managed to get it done. Now that's what you call showing love through carpentry. Saga felt genuinely happy that he could help in some way. A friend approached him and pointed out that he too missed Ashoka a lot. That's why he was fixing things in the kitchen for her. But then the friend asked why he never expressed his feelings. He encouraged him not to bottle up everything in his heart, because it just became a burden. He told him that it was important to be expressive. These words really hit Saga. Something clicked in his mind. And then, without wasting another moment, he ran straight to the festival. At the place where Ashoka had set up her food stall, she suddenly spotted Saga standing quietly. She was taken by surprise seeing him there. Saga opened his heart to her and said he knew she had misunderstood him. What he had actually meant was that she had changed, but in a good way. He told her she had become even warmer than before. In the beginning, he used to get upset with her because he himself was in a fragile emotional state. She had placed so many expectations on him, believing he would become an idol, and had invested so much hope in him, but he had failed to live up to it all. He admitted that he ended up feeling like a complete zero. He told her that she had been special to him yesterday, and she was still just as special today. Then, to comfort her, he gently told her to give herself a hug. Ashoka was completely stunned. She didn't know how to respond. She wanted to sing too and slowly stepped closer, nervous and unsure. But Saga suddenly hugged her so tightly and with such emotion that Ashoka's heartbeat practically skipped. And right after that, Saga ran off in a hurry, leaving Ashoka standing there, wide-eyed, wondering what had just happened. Saga reached home filled with inspiration. The lyrics started pouring into his mind. He now knew what to write in his love song. He stayed up all night writing, completely immersed in it. By morning, the song was fully ready. Just then, he heard a voice say, "Good morning." It was Ashoka's. She had come back. Everyone was so happy to see her return. Ashoka even thanked Saga for fixing the kitchen cabinet for her. That evening, while Ashoka was working on the terrace, Saga came up to her. She assumed he had come for practice, but he called her over and asked her to sit next to him. He told her that he had written the song and that she was the first person he wanted to share his love song with. The song was very heartfelt. Even the president liked it a lot, and so did all the other boys. After that, they recorded the song. They had high hopes that the song would boost their rankings significantly. The song received a lot of publicity. Ashoka was also deeply moved by the song. Whenever she heard it, she felt Saga's emotions in every word. At one point, Naru even asked him if he liked Ashoka. Saga replied that he only knew one thing. Ashoka was special to him, and he was no longer neutral about his feelings. Finally, the day arrived when the boy band's ranking results were to be announced. Everyone's heartbeat quickened with anxiety. They were as nervous as ever. Then it was revealed that their song, Melody, was ranked number 87. The ranking was quite low. All the boys were devastated. They wondered how, with such a small margin, they would ever climb to the top. But if there was still one person who remained optimistic, it was Ashoka. She told them they still had time, and they would keep trying and never give up. That had always been her belief. She promised she would go to any lengths to help the boys reach number 1. Knowing the boys must be really disheartened, Ashoka quickly prepared a nice lunch for them. She did everything she could to lift their spirits and encourage them to share their feelings. At that moment, Saga stood up and said they still had time, and they wouldn't give up. The boys then came together to brainstorm new ideas, how they could get back on track and aim for the top again. They made a firm decision that they would fight till the very last moment to renew their contract. Later, Saga and Naru went to get drinks for lunch. Naru teased him by asking what he had said earlier. Didn't he claim Ashoka was special to him? Was he starting to like her, maybe even falling in love? But Saga replied that he never said that. He only admitted that he wasn't neutral anymore. At that moment, he remembered the hug from when Ashoka had returned, the one he had initiated. Ashoka had told him it was a lovely and very cute make-up hug. Saga blushed just thinking about it, and even now he turned red, just recalling that moment. But he warned Naru not to get too excited. There was no progress on his end. A few days later, Ashoka saw Nav in the market. Nav was about to ignore her and walk away, but Ashoka called her over. Actually, Nav was feeling a bit jealous after learning that Saga cared for Ashoka, that he had even fixed the cabinet just for her. The truth was, Nav liked Saga too. Now, when two girls like the same guy, things are bound to get a little spicy. So, through Ashoka, Nav sent a message to Saga saying she had done him a small favor and was now waiting for a thank you gift. Meanwhile, Saga sat at home, feeling restless. He bumped into a band member's diary near his bed. It was Takra's. He used the diary to list each member's positive qualities so he could understand everyone's strengths. But when Saga looked under Takra's own name, there was nothing written. no qualities listed at all. Takra said that all the others were qualified in some way or another, but maybe he wasn't. He didn't feel good at anything. Compared to the other 6 members, he always saw himself as lacking. That's why he never saw his own strengths. Just then, they heard that Rosie had arrived and she was bringing very big news. The boys had gotten their first live concert. In this concert, they would perform 2 songs, their love song Melody and their very first track, Come Again. The boys felt like life had suddenly given them a second chance. This was a major opportunity. If the concert went well, they could finally reach the #1 spot. Everyone became excited and began strategizing for the concert. They started planning choreography and performances in detail. Ashoka, while standing there watching them, gave them a new idea. Along with their performance, she suggested they include a paired dance concept, which everyone really loved. They had only a few days left, so the boys poured all their energy into rehearsals. They created fresh choreography and new dance steps for their performance. The rehearsals were going great, and they also started live streaming their activities. They stayed very active on social media to gain popularity and push toward the #1 spot. During one live stream, a viewer asked Saga what kind of girl he liked. At that moment, only Ashoka came to his mind, but he stayed quiet. Some of the boys also began appearing on radio shows to promote their group. Meanwhile, one of them kept having silly fights with a member from the rival band Chini. At this point in the show, things were heating up, and whenever they looked at their rankings, it was clear that their performance was improving a lot. They were already somewhere in the 60s. The day finally arrived when only 2 days were left before their concept performance. They rehearsed from every angle and completed all their preparations. However, Takra was secretly dealing with an injured leg. He managed to power through it, but kept it hidden from everyone. Meanwhile, Ashoka had gone to Saga and passed along a message from Nav. She wanted to know why he still hadn't given her a gift. Then she began educating him about how girls loved cute gifts and how he could basically give her anything under the sun. Saga, looking like a man one missed nap away from collapse, replied that he was extremely busy and didn't even have time to breathe. And even if he did, there was only one special person with whom he would like to spend that time. Ashoka, being her usual innocent self, didn't even realize he was talking about her. With just a day left for the concert, everyone was advised to relax and rest. Resting before a big day was apparently as sacred as brushing your teeth and just as ignored. So the boys went to the bathhouse to unwind. Saga came along this time, thanked Nav for helping him that day, and gave her a gift, their concert ticket. Nav was thrilled and said that even though it was a day early, she would definitely be there. While Takra was returning home, the pain in his leg started to get worse. The injury he had been hiding for days was catching up with him. Ashoka was the first to notice and got worried, asking how he was planning to perform like that. But Takra was too scared to tell anyone. He didn't want to disappoint the team. Soon, the rest of the boys arrived. Saga told him there was no need to force himself because he wouldn't be able to give his best in that state. Without wasting time, they picked him up and took him to the hospital. Takra was extremely upset when the doctor told him to take complete rest for 2 weeks. The concert was the next day. He was heartbroken knowing he couldn't participate. Just then, Saga came and told him that they were all one team, one band, and all of them would go on stage together. They told him that just because he couldn't stand didn't mean they couldn't sit. They said all 6 of them would sit and perform together. The boys went home and slightly changed the choreography, adapting it to a sitting performance for Takra's sake. Finally, concert night arrived. A huge crowd gathered. Among them was Lisa, a celebrity who had secretly come because she was a huge fan. Nav and Ashoka were also there. The boys then learned that the concert would be broadcast live, and even the president would be watching. Their future now depended on this performance and how much their rankings would rise afterwards. The boys entered the stage, all seated on chairs. They explained to the audience what had happened to Takra and why they had changed their choreography. Then they began the performance. Takra remained seated throughout, and the others either sat beside him or stood up during parts of the performance. But they never once let him feel isolated. Their performance across both songs was absolutely electrifying. At one point, Saga smiled at Ashoka, who couldn't stop blushing, and Saga kept glancing her way with the look of someone about to write poetry. Afterwards, the boys returned home while Ashoka went to dinner with the others. During the dinner, Rosie asked her if she had ever truly fallen for someone and how she managed to stay so sweet and smiling all the time. Ashoka responded that one only became arrogant when they believed they were better than others. She was genuinely humble and never looked down on anyone. But the memory of what had happened to her in school still haunted her, and it was this that made her see herself as a failure. Later, the band members returned Takra's diary, which they had filled with pages and pages of his positive qualities. Slowly, the band was becoming a perfect team. The next day was the final one, and it was time for ranking updates. Ashoka became nervous. As the list climbed, they were shocked by what they saw on the chart.